The moon hung high above Blackwood Forest, shrouded by swirling clouds that moved like ghostly apparitions across the sky. The air was damp and cold, carrying the scent of decaying leaves and something else, something foul that seemed to cling to the darkness. Sarah shivered as she followed her friends deeper into the woods, the beam of her flashlight flickering against the gnarled, ancient trees that loomed like skeletal giants. She didn't want to be there. No one in town dared to set foot in Blackwood Forest after sunset, not since the disappearances. Not since the whispers began. "This place is creepy as hell," James muttered, his voice breaking the uneasy silence. "I can't believe we're actually doing this." "It's just an old legend," Mark scoffed, his bravado masking the nervousness in his eyes. "Slender Man isn't real. He's just some internet boogeyman people made up to scare kids. Tell that to those who went missing," Sarah whispered, her grip tightening around her flashlight. "They never found their bodies." Silence fell over the group. Even Mark couldn't argue with that. The missing people were real, dozens of them, all last seen near Blackwood Forest. Locals said they heard whispers in the woods, a voice calling their names, luring them deeper until they were never seen again. But Mark was determined to prove it was just a story. He wanted to make a video, to show the world that Slender Man was a hoax. "We just need some footage of the woods at night. We'll be in and out. Easy." Nothing about this felt easy to Sarah. The further they walked, the more the air seemed to thicken, growing colder, pressing down on her like a weight. She glanced around, the trees appearing closer, their branches twisted like skeletal fingers reaching out. They reached a clearing, the ground carpeted with dead leaves that crunched underfoot. The air was deathly still, not even a whisper of wind. That's when Sarah noticed the carvings. They were everywhere, etched into the bark of the surrounding trees, crude stick figures with elongated limbs, twisted and contorted as if in agony. She stepped closer, her flashlight illuminating the jagged lines. The figure's limbs were impossibly long, stretched out just like. A chill ran down her spine. Just like him. "Who did this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "No idea," Mark replied, his own bravado faltering. "But it's perfect for the video. Creepy as hell." James took a step back, his eyes wide with fear. "This was a mistake. We need to leave. Now." Laughter echoed through the clearing, but it wasn't theirs. It was faint at first, like the rustling of leaves, but then it grew louder, circling them, mocking them. It wasn't human. Sarah's heart pounded as she swung her flashlight around, the beam cutting through the darkness. Shadows danced at the edge of the clearing, moving unnaturally, as if they were alive. Her breath hitched when she saw him. He stood just beyond the tree line, impossibly tall and thin, his limbs elongated and twisted like the figures carved into the trees. His face was smooth and blank, devoid of eyes, nose, or mouth, yet she could feel his gaze piercing through her, cold and hollow. Mark's camera clattered to the ground as he stumbled back. What is that?" Before anyone could answer, the figure moved, or rather, it didn't. It flickered, like a glitch in reality, closer than before, its limbs bending at unnatural angles. The air grew colder, and the whisper returned, echoing all around them. "Come, play." James screamed, his body jerking as something wrapped around his ankle, yanking him off his feet. He clawed at the ground, his nails breaking as he was dragged toward the shadows. "Help me. Don't let it take me." But the darkness was merciless. It swallowed him whole, his screams fading into silence. Panic seized them. They ran, crashing through the undergrowth, branches whipping against their faces as the whisper followed, growing louder, more taunting. "You can't hide." Sarah's legs burned, her lungs screaming for air, but she didn't dare look back. She could feel him behind her, his presence suffocating, cold fingers brushing against her spine. Mark's cries echoed through the forest, a sickening crunch silencing him. She didn't stop, tears streaming down her face as she stumbled through the trees, the shadows twisting around her. She burst into another clearing, her chest heaving. The carvings were there too, their twisted figures seeming to move, their limbs stretching out toward her. The air grew colder, and she felt his breath on her neck. Turning slowly, she faced him. He was right there, his faceless head tilted as if curious, his arms stretched out, elongated fingers reaching for her. The whisper was inside her head now, echoing through her mind. "Stay, forever." Her body wouldn't move, paralyzed by his gaze, by the emptiness where his face should be. She tried to scream, but the sound was swallowed by the darkness. His limbs wrapped around her, cold and unyielding, pulling her into the shadows. The world spun, her vision blurring as the darkness consumed her, cold and merciless. The last thing she heard was the whisper, soft and mocking. "Mine." Blackwood Forest was silent once more, the clearing empty save for the fallen flashlight flickering weakly against the trees. New carvings marked the bark, twisted figures with elongated limbs, their faces contorted in silent screams. If you listen closely, on nights when the moon is hidden and the wind is still, you can hear the whisper echoing through the woods, calling out to those who dare enter. Come, play. And the trees listen, their branches swaying as if nodding to the darkness that watches, waiting.